Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hustle and Heart and Happy Sunday, where real life meets real ambition. I'm your host, Sean, and this show is all about the stories behind the hustle, the heart it takes to keep going, and the life lessons we learn along the way. Whether you're a business owner chasing a dream, rebuilding, or just trying to become the best version of yourself, you are in the right place. And tonight I have Mary here, and we are going to do an episode on life discussions. And Mary, are you with me?
I am here, Sean.
All right, great. How are you doing tonight?
I am great. I'm doing well today. And how is your day today?
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Can't complain. The weather's starting to get better. So
Yes, it
that's
is. The
half the
snow is
battle.
melting. The snow is melting. Yay. Spring is on
Yes,
its way. Mm.
absolutely. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Tomorrow is supposed to be 51, which is
Woo.
insane for Michigan. So, yeah, definitely a step in the right direction. But then we go back down to 30 the next day. So,
Oh, no, thank you.
right. It's the
No,
bipolar
it's
weather
supposed
we
to be
have.
60. It's supposed to be 60 here. So
Oh my goodness. See, that's good. But you're
I
in
know.
California, right?
Yes, but I do live at 6,000 feet in the mountains. So
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that makes perfect sense
yeah,
then.
I still have 18 inches of snow outside, but it's melting.
Hey, wow, that's a lot of snow. Good grief. That's more than we have.
Oh, well, but it's warmer.
Right, right. Definitely warmer. All right, let's get started here. Can we start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself and what led you to become a teacher?
No problem. First, I want to say it's an honor to be invited here. So thank you. And especially because hustle and heart just isn't just a catchy phrase to me. In my family, it's kind of like in our DNA because my grandfather was the superintendent and my grandmother taught kindergarten. So I kind of grew up seeing the impact a teacher has at every level. But really, most important to me and why I became a teacher was because school was a safe haven for me during a difficult childhood. So early on, I learned that if you have hustle but no heart, you burn out. If you have heart but no hustle, you can't lead. So I've kind of spent my life finding that sweet spot in between. But I chose to be a teacher because I wanted to give that sense of security and inspiration and safe spot to my students that I have. That's I can say that my philosophy is that a student cannot learn until they can feel safe and seen. And since school was my sanctuary during my parents' divorce, I prioritize building my classroom as a culture of stability and belonging. And once that foundation of trust is made, then the academics and the growth can follow. So I grew up watching my grandfather lead a district in a little tiny town called Little Fork, Minnesota. You may have heard of it. And it's right on the edge of the Canadian border. And I saw how school wasn't just a building in a little town, it was the heartbeat of the entire community. And I want to bring that to where I am today. So that's why I became a teacher.
That is great. That's wonderful. No one would have known that if you didn't tell us because that's something that, like you said, it's something that you started with when you were young because it was your safe place, and then you became a teacher because you wanted to pass that on and make your students feel the same, and be able to teach them that there's more than what, you know, they learn on the outside. So that's it's a good
That's the
thing.
heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me see here. What first inspired your passion for education and helping others grow?
Yeah. Kind of like I said, my grandparents and the safety that I felt in the classroom. I look at who I am today, and it's because of what I had in that classroom. All those teachers that I had that made me feel safe, that made me feel seen. And again, my grandparents who also did the same thing. To her dying day, my grandmother was always the kindergarten teacher. I mean, even she had Alzheimer's, and you could even still see her. It's funny, you could see her doing her finger movements and saying the little sayings that she used to say, all the little nursery rhymes and stuff that I learned as a kid from her. That of course, I use in my classroom now. So, it to me, it was just part of who I was from the time I was a little kid. I mean, I played school with my sister and brother.
There's nothing wrong with it. And I think that just about every one of us. I mean, most won't admit it, but I know I did too when I was young. So,
I didn't know that everybody else did that too.
well, I did with some friends that I met in school, and I mean, you get bored with playing, the same thing over and over again, and going outside and riding your bike. I mean, sure, that those are fun things to do when you're young, but eventually you get bored with it, and you have to figure out something else to do to
Right, exactly.
entertain your time.
Yeah, I didn't realize that other people did that. I just thought it was us.
Well, hey, that's the thing. We learn something new about everybody,
Yeah,
and that's one of the things that I love about my podcast is I want us all to learn from each other. And some people don't realize that you can learn from each other. We just have to listen.
yeah,
Because I've learned things that I never thought I would learn, just being in, in the online world in general. So it definitely makes a difference. If we listen, we can learn a lot more than we think.
we certainly can.
Who or what has the biggest influence on the person you are today?
I know this is going to be a shock to you, but I'd say my grandparents, because my grandparents showed me that education is both a science and an art. So my grandfather, he went from being a math teacher to a superintendent in Little Forks, Big Falls School District. So he taught me about leadership and that big picture of how a school functions. But my grandmother, teaching kindergarten, showed me that patience and foundation and love are required to start a child's journey. So they didn't just go to work, they built communities. And that modeled for me the idea that a career should be a service. Um, what also influenced me, though, is just the environment of the school itself, especially, like I said, during my parents' divorce. When they were going through the divorce, the world just felt loud and it was unpredictable. But when I stepped into the classroom, the floor didn't shake. My teachers in that space provided a sanctuary. So now my hustle is making sure my lesson plans are perfect, but my heart is making sure my classroom is that steady ground, the same place for the kids who feel that their world's falling apart. So that experience shaped my character. It made me resilient. I'm observant and I'm deeply empathetic. And it taught me that a teacher isn't someone who just delivers a lesson. They are someone who provides the stability a child may be missing somewhere else in their life. So the person I am today is someone who values high standards, thanks to my grandfather, but leads with heart because I know firsthand how much a student needs to feel safe before they can truly learn. And that is from my grandmother.
Well, that's not a bad thing. See, a lot of people don't realize, but whoever brings us up or has the most influence on us, they have an influence on us our whole lives. We
Yes.
don't lose that.
No, we
Um, That's something that we take with us. I lost my grandma back in 2001, my mom's mom, and the memories that I have from her are just, it's almost like it was yesterday.
yeah.
It's not something that you forget, if they're memorable.
Yeah.
My my dad's mom, she was a teacher, and she was a special education teacher.
No,
Um,
that's
and and she absolutely loved teaching. I mean, I was young when she died, but I mean, she would bring things home when I was that young to start teaching me things before I even started Head Start. So that's how much she loved teaching, that she couldn't stop teaching. So,
so, I'm going to say this, a teacher isn't what you do, it's who you are. It's
and
in
you know
your
what? I believe that. And I believe that to my heart because that woman, to her dying day, she wanted to teach no matter what. And
Mhm.
sadly, she died from lung cancer, and she never smoked a day in her life. Um, they opened her up for surgery, and within 3 or 4 weeks, she passed.
Oh, how
So
sad.
it spread. So um, people think that, you know, you can't die from things because of this, that, and the other, but it's possible. It's definitely possible.
Yes.
Um, um, but we don't want to get emotional.
Oh,
But
It's
but it's
part of
one of
life.
those things, but it's one of those things where I wish she would have lived longer because I just know that she would, I mean, I know she's proud of me now, but I believe that she'd be even more proud of me being alive, to be able to experience, the man I grew into. So
Yeah. We just have to believe that she's seen it.
absolutely, absolutely, very true. Let me see. I think I was 4 when she passed, so I was
Oh,
very young.
yeah, very young.
Let me see here. What life lessons has teaching taught you that go far beyond the classroom?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm going to say the biggest lesson I've learned, both from watching my grandparents and from my own childhood, is that consistency is a form of love. So when my home was like in flux during my parents' divorce, the fact that my teacher were there every morning with a plan and a smile was everything. I learned that you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to have all the answers, but sometimes the most impactful thing you can do for someone is to be reliable, steady, and present. Teachings taught me that behavior is always is a language. So every kid, and all of us actually, not even just kids, but walk into school what I call an invisible backpack. Sometimes it's full of books, but a lot of times it's full of the arguments their parents had at breakfast, or the fact they didn't get enough to eat or enough to sleep, or any of those little things. It could be that, their hair is not right that day because that, can ruin the whole day for some of the kids. So my job is to help them set that backpack down just for a few hours and just be a kid. That's made me a more empathetic person outside of my classroom too, because whenever I'm dealing with a difficult colleague or a friend, I've learned to ask, what's happening in the world that I can't see? Instead of just jumping to judgment. Because, we're all quick to doing that. And we're not as quick as thinking about what's happening, what's in their backpack that you don't know about. And so that is real important. I'm going to say my grandfather's career taught me a huge lesson in humility and passion. So he reached the top of the ladder as a superintendent, even in that small little district. He did some things that were like in the 60s when they built one of the schools that he built. He named it after a female. And in the 1960s, that was just not seen. So it was one of the first schools that was built and named after a female, which was, crazy. So, but then when he moved to California, he decided to return to the classroom. So what he taught me is that sex isn't success, I can't talk, isn't just about moving up. It's being about where you can make the most difference. It taught me to be adaptable and follow the work that actually feeds my soul rather than just chasing a title. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I mean, let me ask you this. What do you teach a specific subject? Do you teach a specific grade?
Right now, and in fact, and since the conception of this grade in California, I teach what's called transitional kindergarten. And that's only a grade in California because most of the states, the kids had to be 5 entering into kindergarten. And in California, our kids were 4 years and 6 months. And they were really struggling because the standards got harder and harder, and they weren't given enough time to be a kid and develop. So we started transitional kindergarten, which is it started the kids. So the kids entering kindergarten had to be 5 on or before September 1st. And the kids entering TK are 4 on or before September 1st. So like I myself would have been a TK. And so like when I started college, I was only 17 because we didn't have TK back then. And so I would have gone to TK for that year. And that really would have been a little bit more mature when I started school. So what that year does is gives them another year to be in school, learn what school's about, but not being held to the academics of kindergarten. So they get more time to be a kid, but still learn the school policies. Does that make sense what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say?
that does. That's
So,
amazing. That's really
yeah.
good because you're right. We don't have that here. We have Head Start. So maybe it's a little bit like the same.
We
Um,
have Start here too, though. So it's actually
okay.
different. It's like that bridge between Head Start or pre-K and kindergarten.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, yep. So that makes a huge difference then. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
How
I
have,
think
go
we're the
ahead.
only state that has it. I think we're the only state that has TK.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Well, see, look at that, friends. We're learning something we never knew. How has working with students shaped your view of resilience and perseverance?
So, when I was little, I thought resilience was like this heroic act, this one-time thing, but I realize resilient is actually a quiet daily choice. So I see it in a student that had that chaotic night at home, but still chose to walk in my door, hang up their backpack, and get to work. Even if their work in my classroom is sometimes play. But because school was my sanctuary during my parents' divorce, I recognized that quiet resilience immediately. It taught me that being okay isn't a, a prerequisite for learning, but sometimes showing up right there is just the victory itself. So it's shifting from getting the right answer to just staying in that struggle. So I often think of my grandfather. He preserved through the complexities of being a superintendent, which, to me, I can't even imagine how hard that job is. But his true perseverance was his lifelong commitment to his classroom. So in my students, see them fail at something. I see them feel disappointment and then look at me and ask, "Can you show me how to do this?" So it's about not failing, it's about having a safe environment to feel okay to get back up. So it can also be contagious, if you know what I'm saying. So when you get that stability, you're able to take more risk. When you feel safe, you can try things because you can feel that floor beneath you solid. So it's something that's built through trust and consistency. I hope
Okay.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it does make sense. And you know what? Something that no one typically knows that know me online. And I have a lot of friends online, but they don't know everything about me.
Of course not.
So, something that I will share on this podcast because you are a teacher. In second grade, I was struggling with math. And oh my goodness, math has never been my strong suit. I absolutely hated every dreaded moment of a math class. And it wasn't so much I hated numbers, it was just the fact that I could not find someone that could teach me how I could understand. Um, it
I get
wasn't,
that one.
you know, I mean, it wasn't that I didn't get some of it because I did. It was just something wasn't clicking.
Mm-hmm.
And I was failing tests and I was failing basically second grade math, which was terrible, and my mom came in for a conference and they told they told her, he's passing everything but math and we can't pass him on because he won't, you know what I mean? He's not going to
You're not going to be
progress like he
successful. Right.
needs to. He's not going to be successful if we let him go because this math is nothing compared to what he's going to be learning in third grade. And
Right.
she's like, okay, so what's your suggestion? Summer school or, what? And they're like, oh, no, we don't do summer school. And at that time, they didn't do summer school. So
Mm-hmm.
I was held back a whole year because of math. I passed everything but my math that first year. And then the second year, they got a tutor to tutor me my whole entire year. And that tutor I went through three tutors only
Mm-hmm.
because I just was not learning from the other two. And then what they did was they got a high schooler to come and tutor me. Someone that I could more relate to, I guess, if you want to
Mm-hmm.
say that.
Yeah.
And I passed my test with flying colors after I started tutoring with a person that I could relate to, and they could, teach me on my level. That's another thing too. A lot of people don't understand, and well, of course, I know you do because you're a teacher, but some people don't understand. Not there, a student is not stupid. Um,
No.
Everybody learns in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
and if you can't relate to that person, if you can't teach them the way that they can be taught and understand, then that student's not going to be successful in the end.
That's right.
So I wanted to share that with everybody. I hope that everyone, didn't be like, wow. But hey, that's okay because, I'm old enough now to accept the reason why it had to happen, and I wouldn't be where I am today if that wasn't the case. So I'm
Good.
grateful for it.
Yeah, no, in the end, you are grateful for those things. But, it's funny because my grandfather is a math teacher and I hated math as well.
Wow, look at that.
Um, but I loved doing math with my grandfather because my grandfather made it fun. Like
And see,
I
that's the thing too.
like okay, I have two doctorate degrees, okay, and I have never memorized my times tables. And
What?
so remember, like in third and fourth grade, you had to do those timed tests where you had to pass them.
Yes.
Okay, I could never pass one of those timed tests because I didn't memorize them. Now I can figure out what, 7 times 6 is and all those things. And, but I didn't memorize it. I couldn't do it like that. So I could never pass those times tests, but I knew how to do it. I knew how to solve the problem and I could get the answer. I just couldn't get it in that time.
Oh no,
So,
I completely understand that
yeah.
because I'm terrible at anything that is timed.
Okay, see?
Um,
So,
yeah,
I would never pass those, but I could answer all the questions. I could do division, I could do all those things, and I could do the higher math skills because I understood numbers. I understood and I played with numbers from the time I was a little kid. We played gazintas, which is division, by the way.
okay.
But I didn't know I was doing division. I was just playing gazintas with grandpa.
Well, see, there
So,
you go. That's even more
right.
helpful. Yeah.
I did all those things, but I didn't. So I understood numbers and I loved numbers, but I hated time test and all those other things. All they did was make me stressed.
No, and I completely understand that. And I mean, I can relate to that even now because
Right.
I have a cosmetology degree. I have a license as a cosmetologist, and that was a time test.
Oh,
We
yeah, it
had,
is.
yep, we had an hour and a half to complete the test. And this is the funniest thing, and we'll move on after I tell you this. But I thought I failed it. And the reason why I thought I failed it is because the computer went black. And when the computer went black, I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I just failed this test. I bombed it. I
Right.
went out there and they're like, here you go. And I'm like, what's this? They're like, this is your license. I said, it's my license. I said, I thought I failed. She goes, no. She goes, it should have said congratulations. I said, no, it went black. She goes, oh, okay. She goes, that explains why you're so puzzled. So yeah, I mean, I passed, you know, enough questions to where I did not have to complete the whole 200 question test. Because once you
Cool.
hit 85% or better, you automatically pass the exam. But
Right.
it freaked me out because I'm like, oh my God, I just bombed this test. I just spent all this money and I have to spend it again. This is not good. And when I walked out there and they handed me my piece of paper to get my license, I was like, oh my goodness, I was like in heaven.
Yeah.
So,
How freaky that would have been for the test group. Yeah, I would have done the same thing. I would have thought I bombed it too.
right, it's just like, wait a minute, why did this computer turn off? Because it turned off. Like it just, and I've tried to press the button to turn it back on and it wouldn't come back on. So I'm like, oh my goodness, I broke the computer. I failed. Not
Yeah,
good. Um, but yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of things in life that we find out later that it's better than what it we thought it was. That's
exactly.
super helpful. What do you think young people today need most from the adults in their lives?
You're going to be totally shocked at this one, but I think they need an emotionally safe place. I know this because during my divorce, my teachers gave me that stability that I didn't find at home. And a child can't focus on their learning if they're worried about what's going to happen after the bell rings, or sad to say, in some kids' cases, what's going to happen at school. They need to know that when they walk into that room, their outside world stays out and they're protected no matter what. And sometimes they don't get that in the classrooms. Sometimes they don't get that at recess, but they need to have adults that are predictable. Like I said, my grandfather, he didn't just teach math. He was a constant, whether he's a teacher or a superintendent. People knew what he stood for. For students whose life might be in flux, a teacher who shows up with the same energy, the same boundaries, and that same smile every single day of their life. Consistency is how we build trust. So young people who need someone who looks past them as a student and sees them as a person or a human. They need someone who notices when their head's down or when they're playing school a little too intensely because they need an escape. They need to be seen for their potential, especially on the days when they're making it really hard to see it. I often say that the person who needs love the most is the one that's probably the one that's annoying you. So my grandfather, you know, was really good at seeing past when somebody was struggling with something. But, the one who had the gift for that was, of course, my grandmother, that kindergarten teacher, which kind of, I really did look up to her. Um, she knew that if you don't reach the heart, you're never going to reach the head. And so what all of us need is that person that's consistent and emotionally safe. All of us need that, not just young people, but young people need it the most because I'm seeing they're not getting consistency in their life and they don't always have that safe place.
And that's very true, everyone. And believe it or not, like Mary just said, it's not just young people. Us adults, we need that too. We need a support system that we can go to or we can hang out with that person and we can tell that there's something wrong with them. And we need to be that one that can not judge the individual, but ask them questions and find out what's troubling them because we don't know what anyone's going through. We have no idea. You know, that person in the, Starbucks line, they might pay for your order. They're having a great day, but the person behind you would not have done the same. But if you do that for them, they're going to say, "Oh my goodness, that was so nice of that person." Kindness
Right.
and,
We never know,
things that
like I said, that emotional backpack or that invisible backpack. We never know what's in anyone else's backpack. And we're
yeah, we
all,
don't have a clue.
yeah. And a lot of times we're all too quick to judge. Guilty myself.
And you know what? Like you said, we're all guilty of it. Um, I am going to school to be a social worker and or a counselor slash therapist. I actually have about probably another year left in my bachelor's program. I took a break because I funding was not my friend and had no other choices. But um, that's one thing that I learned from many classes, that we can't prejudge another individual because, like you said, we don't have a clue what's in their backpack or what's in their invisible anything. We have no clue. That person can be smiling at us and they could be hurting inside. They can be crying inside. We have no clue what they're going through. And if we smile at that individual and they're having the worst day of their life, that could brighten their day instantly because we gave them a smile that they haven't gotten all day. Um, so that definitely makes a huge difference, not only in a child's life, but also in an adult's life too.
Mhm.
What has been one of the most challenging moments in your career and how did you grow from it?
So, early in my career, and I've taught everything from TK to high school. So, but I had a student that was going through a very messy, high conflict divorce at home. Now, because of my history, knowing exactly how that feel and how I used school to be my safe place, I felt that immediate drive just to protect that student. So I wanted to be everything. I wanted to be their teacher, their counselor, their shield, and I started to over identify with their struggle. And I found myself coming home and being emotionally exhausted because I realized I was trying to save that student. And I was actually losing my effectiveness as their teacher because I was so focused on that emotional state that I was struggling to maintain that firm, consistent boundaries that they actually needed to feel secure. So I had to learn from that hard lesson that my grandfather probably knew really well, that structure is a form of care. So the best way to be that sanctuary for a child isn't to remove all their challenges. but to provide that predictable, safe environment where they know what is expected of them. So I learned how to balance that deep empathy with professional boundaries, which is so important. So now when I see a student struggling at home, whether it's my student in my classroom or a student I've had in the past, I don't just feel for them, I act for them by being that most consistent person in their life. So I give them the grace they need, but I also provide those high expectations that I still had for them. So that I'm telling them, I believe you're capable even on your hardest days. And that is the biggest lesson that I had to learn and give to all my kids, whether they're my students now or, kids that I know at my school. Some of them I still know that are in college. I need to be that consistent person for them.
And that can be challenging, definitely, no doubt about that. I mean, I had teachers that, I could tell myself when I was younger that some of the students, they were just hurting big time. They had a horrible life at home, and you could tell because of how they acted in class and they acted out in class. And oh, I
Mm.
have to throw my pencil across the room and interrupt the teacher every 5 seconds, and I
Oh, you've
have
been
to
in
make
my
sure I get on
class.
her nerves. Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, and we're talking, third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade. It's like, come on, guys,
I know
grow
I
up.
have this in TK even. But yeah.
It's like, come on, grow up, Let's act like we have sense, okay? Come on. But I learned, as I was growing up, that I'm like, you know what? That makes perfect sense, you don't know what they're going through at home. So that's why they're acting out to get the attention from the teacher, even if it's not super positive attention, they're getting attention from that teacher, and the teacher is not yelling at them, but they're showing them attention that they don't get at home.
Attention is
Um,
attention, no matter which way, negative or positive.
Right, exactly. And they're like, "Ooh, I made her mad. Ooh, let me do it again," So,
Mhm.
or I got under her skin. Let's do that again. Um, so yeah, definitely it can be challenging, and it can help us grow as we, learn how to handle the situation. Like you said, either positive or negatively. The student, to them, it doesn't make a difference. They're
Right.
getting a rise out of you. They're getting your attention like they want.
Mhm.
Um, How do you stay motivated during difficult times, both personally and professionally?
Well, professionally, I stay motivated by remembering my grandfather's career path. So when things get difficult or bureaucracy, feels really heavy, because sometimes at school, those meetings and that stuff is worse than anything else. But I think about how he went from being from a superintendent back into the classroom because it reminds me that the heart of the work is that 30 feet between the chalkboard and the back row. If I can make an impact in that space, the difficult outside noise doesn't matter as much. So I focus on those small wins, like a student finally grasping a concept or a quiet student finally raising their hand. And this is going to be funny. That perfect student who got in trouble and is still knows that I still love them. That's really important to me too. So then personally, I also stay motivated, remembering that I was once that teacher, I mean that student that needed the teacher to be okay. So when I'm having a hard day, I remind myself there's likely a child in my room right now that's going through exactly what I went through. They're looking for me for that stability. So my motivation comes from the responsibility of being their safe place. I can't control their world, but I can control the climate in my classroom. And that gives me a huge sense of purpose. And I try and keep that kid that played school with her siblings alive. I remind her that I remind myself that I'm literally dreaming of what I dreamed of doing when I was 6 years old. So when you view your profession as a calling rather than a job, like I told you, a teacher is what I am, not what I do. Those difficult days just become another chapter in your world, not the end of the story. And then, you said about myself, at home. I mean, you know me, I live life to its fullest. I go to Kings game and cheer on my team. I go to concerts and cheer on my bands. Um, I go have fun. I explore the world around me. I take my dogs for hikes. I take them to the beach and run with them on the beach and play in the water with them because play is important for all of us. And, recreation is to recreate. So I spend time recreating and recreating me and making that balance work for me.
Most definitely. And that's one thing I think that all of us can relate to is that we have to learn to live and not live to work. We
Yes.
have to learn to separate the two things. When we're working or when we're doing our career, we are doing that. When we are not at work or at our career, then we need to be able to separate and be able to live our lives to the fullest because we only get one life to live.
That's right.
So it's super important that I'm I probably am going to sound selfish when I say this, but we have to live our life to the fullest because we don't know what tomorrow brings. We don't
You
know
and
if
I
we're
both
going
know
to wake up the next
that.
day.
Both know that.
Yep, we don't know if we're going to live to see tomorrow. So we have to enjoy every day like it's our last. Um, and that's super important. I had my accident 12 years ago. I
Mhm.
didn't know that was going to happen, but I'm grateful that I had a second chance at life. And thankfully, I am here to tell it. But it's one of those things where it really gives you, like, wow, I was a positive person before, and I'm still a positive person now. But some people don't bounce back like that.
No.
We don't know how a person's going to react to anything that they come across. But when it comes to that, it's super important for all of us to do our best to learn the difference between the two and be able to separate the two to be able to, you know, enjoy both. If you enjoy your job or career, that's a great thing. If you don't, that's not good, but you can work on that.
Yeah.
But we have to be able to separate the two. That's super important. And let's see what we got for you next. What advice would you give to someone feeling burned out or overwhelmed?
What I was trying to take, like those big things that overwhelm you, like testing, the red tape or administrative things and all that stuff. But what you need to do is shrink your world. Focus exclusively on those four walls of your classroom for just a few days. Don't worry about those outside things. See, even my grandfather, as a superintendent, knew that the real magic happened in that small circle between teachers and students. So if you can find one win with one student today, you can survive the rest of the noise. So I also share with them like my own story about how they might be the only safe place a student had today. So when I was a kid during when my parents divorced, my teachers probably had no idea that they were my heroes. They were just doing their jobs. So that I remind somebody that your average day might be a student's lifeline that day. So it kind of changes that shift from what I have to do to who am I doing it for. And then I tell them to remember to bring back that little plain school energy because burnout comes when you're losing the joy. You first had to be on fire before you can burn out. So scrape that formal lesson plan for an hour. Do an activity that made you want to be that teacher in the safe place, whether it's a science experiment or a creative writing prompt or just playing. So sometimes you have to feed your own soul. Just like always, we have to take care of yourself before you can take care of someone else. So feeding your own soul before you can take care of your students. And maybe it's just to have some fun in your classroom and play.
Absolutely. You know what? And the thing is I tell people this all the time. I was that little human that loved to swing on the swings and never wanted to come inside after recess was over because I didn't, there was many teachers that certain things were great coming from them and other things were like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. So when we got recess time, I'm like, oh yes, we get to go play. This
Mhm.
is our fun time. Who wants to come in from recess? Nobody.
Not even me.
Nobody ever. Exactly.
Yeah.
Who wants to do that? So yeah, but burnout is real, everybody. And I know that I think just about every one of us that are listening to this podcast tonight can relate to burnout is not fun. And we have to learn that we need to, stop that before it gets to that point if we absolutely have control of doing so. And we do, we just have to learn how to control it.
Right.
Can you share a moment when you realized you truly made a difference in a student's life?
Yeah. I really had to think about this one, but um, it, a few years ago, I had a kid that reminded me of myself at that age. It wasn't one of my students. It was a former student who I just noticed them, on campus. They were kind of looking small. I don't know how to explain that, but they kind of were trying to make themselves look smaller than they were. And, you know, having been that same place, I kind of recognized that withdrawal. So I didn't pull them aside and talk about their test scores or anything like that because their grades were slipping. Their teacher told me. All I just was just trying to make sure I was out there on the playground and I said hello to them every day. And I invited him to come help in my classroom. And so one afternoon, this child was in my classroom and it was their time to go to recess, their recess time. But instead of going to recess, they just stayed in there. And, they didn't have a question for me or anything. They just kind of stayed in and was like straightening up the bookshelves in my classroom. So I didn't start a conversation or anything. I just kind of stayed at my desk and was working on something and let the room be quiet. So after a few minutes, he looked up to me and he said, "It's just really quiet in here. I like that it's the same way every time I come in here. And your room is calm and it feels safe." So I realized for them, I was giving them the consistency again that they lacked somewhere else. I was being that version of those teachers or my grandfather or my grandmother for them. So, and they came for a couple weeks to help in my room and then they stopped coming and their grades improved. But more importantly, their shoulders dropped. They didn't look to me like they were carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. So it's not always about that movie moment or that big speech. Making a difference is just for being that predictable, safe environment where they have permission to just be a kid and just relax and be safe.
Okay, yeah, see, that's amazing. And that's something that not every student gets to experience. And I believe that they all need to experience that because I feel that they would do better if they did.
Hmm.
Um, I definitely can say that. And I know that there was times where I didn't always feel that way. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a huge difference between teacher to teacher. Every teacher is different. So, there's a difference between a teacher that's a teacher from the heart, and there's a teacher that's doing it because, oh, this is what my parents wanted, or this is what I chose and I really don't like it, but I'm here and I did this and now I have to deal with it kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, so there's a huge difference, and you can tell. I mean,
Oh,
students can definitely tell. There's no doubt about that. They definitely can tell the difference between a teacher that is a teacher because they do it from their heart and they want and they love their career that they chose, and then the ones that are just like, oh my God, I want to rip out my hair because this teacher is driving me insane because she hates her job and she doesn't want to do it, but she has to do it. So,
yes. Or she's doing it because she likes to have 3 months off.
right, right, exactly. That's a perk, right? But it's not a perk if you don't really enjoy it. And that's another thing too. I want to point out, we all need to, and I know, don't get me wrong, I've had jobs that I could not stand. We all I worked that fast food job that I'm just like, oh my goodness, what am I still doing here? This job is terrible. I hate the hours. The customers are terrible. They're disrespectful. They're rude. You
I
name
worked at
it.
fast food too. Yes.
We've all done it. And we said, oh my goodness, I'll never go back there if I don't have to. But I was taught by a teacher at a young age, never say never, ever, ever, because you never know when you might have to go back to that same place that you don't want to go back to, because that's the only thing you can find at that moment. So,
Right.
so we don't ever want to say never, ever, ever. We can say
Right.
if I don't have to, I won't, but
I don't want to, but I will
I
if I
don't want
have
to, but
to.
I will if I have to. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. And what does showing up with heart look like in your daily work?
Well, that starts at the classroom door. My grandmother, who taught kindergarten for decades, she knows, and she taught me that the first 10 seconds of your student's day sets their tone for the next 6 hours. So for me, heart looks like being at that door every morning, calling that student by name, checking their emotional temperature. I let them tell me how they want to be greeted, whether it's a hug, a high five, a, a shoe high five. I have a little boy that likes to kick the bottom of my shoe. That's his way of greeting. Some just want to give me a thumbs up, whatever, some want to shake hands, whatever it is, they get to choose. And so, but I always make sure I greet them with their name and the way they want to greet. And then I want them to feel that no matter what happened at breakfast or what happened on the bus or in the playground or what happened yesterday at school, because they might have gotten in trouble yesterday, that that day in that room, it's a fresh start and we all start with the same. Because again, because school was my sanctuary, I've realized that consistency is the highest form of heart. So we often think it's like, hugs and emotional speeches, but it's really about being the most predictable, reliable adult in that child's life. So means maintaining my boundaries, keeping my routine even on the hard days, because structure is what that struggling child is needing to feel safe. It also means looking for that student I used to be, that one who's working extra hard to stay distracted from home life. It's noticing the students who's too quiet, not just the one that's too loud, by letting a child stay in at recess if they want to, and just straighten books, even if they're not the student that is your student in your class, and giving them a few more minutes of peace. It's not that extra work, it's the core of the work. And it's about professional integrity. Because, like, my grandfather didn't become superintendent just for the title, he did it to serve more students. Showing it heart with means treating that profession with the respect that it deserves, preparing my lessons with care, collaborating with my team, and never losing sight of the fact that I'm building the future for the kids, just like my grandparents did for their students.
Okay, absolutely. And that makes perfect sense. And that makes sense from many standpoints. And showing up with heart in all of our jobs or our careers, it should mean a lot to us because when we go in with our full heart, we're going to do our very best. We are going to perform like we never performed before, and it's not going to feel like work. And that's I'm sure this relates to, you can relate to this. When you are doing what you love to do, it doesn't feel like work. You enjoy
Right.
it. You enjoy every second of it. So you're just like, oh, thank goodness, I chose this. And, with me, my biggest downfall was when my accident happened to me, my career basically was destroyed because
Right.
I can't stand, I can't sit for too long. So it's like 20 minutes standing up, 20 minutes sitting down. Well, when you're a cosmetologist, you can't do that.
No, you
You
sure
have
can.
to be standing. So I can't work in a salon because they won't accept that. And I'm a
Right.
liability to them. So when they told me, oh, well, you can still work, you can do a sit down job. Well, maybe that's not what I chose. And it wasn't what I chose because
Right.
I didn't, I didn't go to beauty school and become a cosmetologist to sit on my behind and do nothing all day kind of thing. So that wasn't my choice. I reevaluated myself and, I'm still able to do something that I enjoy doing, because I retrained myself that, this is my situation and I can either fight it or I can go with it and find a way to enjoy because I got a second chance.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. It really is.
No, it is.
Um, and I've went, back and forth many different ways. And, my secondary option is social work counseling. And that's why I'm going, back to school for that because I can sit or I can stand and do both of those. I can be a motivational speaker and do that, so um that is, the little bit tidbit that I wanted to relate to everybody. It's not always what we have planned for our life. Sometimes other things are planned that we didn't know.
Yep.
So, and we have to learn to adjust and um go with it from our heart. And, if we have to hustle to do it, then that's what we do. So I wanted to relate that within this too, because, we don't know what anyone else is going through. So we need to try to relate to everybody on their level.
Yes.
And let me see here what we got next for you, Mary. In your opinion, what are the biggest challenges students face today outside of academics?
That invisible backpack, the home life stretchers, the economic instability, family transitions, conflicts, all that stuff that they're carrying in that backpack. Because school was my safe place, I'm actually aware that they can't transition from to learning mode if they're stuck in survival mode. If they didn't get enough to eat, if they didn't get enough to sleep, all those things, they have to have those needs met and their emotional needs met before they can learn. So it's not just the stress, but sometimes for kids, it's that lack of a pause button, because like in this day and age, screen time, everything that's that cyberbullying, they're never really off. The digital world and social media means that social pressure, bullying, that comparison trap, they follow them at home, school, and back again. And that cognitive fatigue and anxiety that we didn't see decades ago, I didn't have growing up, you know. Students today are so connected digitally, but they're isolated emotionally. So with that fast pace of modern life, they lack what my grandfather provided, that radical consistency. So they're navigating in this world that is so loud and unpredictable. And adults who aren't there just, they need the adults that are there, not just to grade them or to judge them, but to be steady and unchanging anchors in their life. So the challenge of today is finding spaces where they can be a kid without that pressure to perform or without that fear of being judged. And that's a hard place to be for all of us. I mean, I think we all need that. But I can't fix their lives at home and I can't turn off their internet. But with me, for those 6 hours they're with me, that invisible backpack gets to set down and I can focus on their social emotional learning because I know that when they feel safe and seen, the academic challenges are so much easier to deal with. And it's so much easier those behavior challenges too when they feel safe and when they feel seen and when they feel cared for.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've been through some trials and tribulations throughout school and there's times where I thought, wow, I wish this happened. I wish that happened. Because I mean, I am I'm 38. I'll be 39. So in the years that I went, to elementary school, there was bullying at that time, and I was one of those
Really?
people that I was bullied. And thankfully, I had a counselor that taught me, what, that bully, you don't know what they're going through. We'll take care of this. We will talk this out. We will get this taken care of. And it took me so long to say something because I felt, oh, I'm going to get in trouble if I tell on that person.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to tell on that person. But now it's so bad that if you don't say something, look at what's happening. You hear on the news every day that, this student decided they were going to, kill themselves because they were bullied so badly and they felt so bad about themselves, and the parents knew nothing about it because they're not telling their parents. They're not saying anything to their parents. Um, so it's definitely something that I agree with you. They definitely need, some people probably will not agree with this, but I believe that someone that does not have parental controls on social media should not be on social media. There's too much out there. There's too many people out there that it may not even be a student. It might be someone that's pretending to be a student that's
Oh,
bullying
really?
them
Yep.
to a point where they will do things to harm themselves because they can't take it anymore. And instead of them trying to get help, they're afraid that someone's going to, you know, they're going to get in trouble or someone's going to judge them or this, that, and the other. So, yeah, I mean, I personally think that without parental controls, they shouldn't be on. To, make it to where they can only do so much. And a lot of people think that that's old school. That's not old school. That's reality.
It is
Um,
reality. It's safety.
it's safety. We have to think about the safety. And of course, the student's not going to like it. No, of course not, because they're being restricted to where they cannot do every single thing that everyone else is able to do. But yeah, I feel that that's super important. And like I said, some people may not agree, but that's my opinion on the situation because I went through it and I didn't go through social media as far as that because at that time there was no social media.
Right.
Um, but in general, no matter what the bullying is, it's it is a thing and it's serious and no one knows what it feels like until they go through it themselves. Um, to that extent. So that is where I'll leave that.
Okay.
Um,
I don't disagree with you either.
well, that's a good thing. Yeah, I didn't think you would. How can communities better support teachers and youth?
I think that communities can support youth best when school isn't an island. So we need to move toward a wraparound model where local businesses, libraries, mental health services, and all that is integrated with the school's mission. So, like I said, when I was a kid, school was my safe place. But that safety is even stronger when the entire community reinforces it. So, communities can support youth by providing mentorship problems, safe third spaces outside of the home and school where kids can learn and grow without the pressure of a grade. And like teachers, communities need to recognize that we're humans before we are instructional deliverers. My grandfather and grandmother stayed in education for their entire lives because they felt valued by their neighbors and their districts. And communities can support teachers by trusting our professional expertise and by showing up not just when there's a problem, but to celebrate even those small victories. So that community that treat teachers as essential pillars of society rather than just service providers reduces that burnout and keeps veterans in the classroom, and that's important. But the best way that anything can be supported, kids, communities, all of it is through stability. Because frequently changes in funding, leadership, or curriculum is jarring for students who already have unstable lives. So, advocating for consistent resources, long term planning, that community creates that sanctuary that we all need to rely on. So, when they invest in a school, they're telling the child that you are worth our time and our resources. And, that's anywhere from our kindergarten rug to the sports in the high school. If, see it as a village. When they support the teacher can support the child, and then that's a cycle of care that I can be proud that I'm a part of. Unfortunately, we don't always get that support.
Right, exactly. I completely agree with you on that. Not always do we all get that support that we need. What role does kindness and empathy play in shaping future generations?
That's such a, to me, that was like, oh, come on. Um, it's it's a seed planted early, but it's also a standard set at the top. Kindness is the invisible infrastructure of a classroom. I always say choose kindness. Was that a kind choice? Because, school needs to be that safe place. Empathy isn't just about being nice. It's providing emotional stability that they need to take risk. When you model empathy, you're teaching children how to regulate their emotions and how to hold space for others. So we're shaping a generation that doesn't just look for the right answers, but looks for the right way to treat people. There's a lot of smart people in the world. We need a lot more nice people. So for us, they talk about education's job is to prepare students for the future workplace, but you can't have collaboration or leadership without empathy. You have to understand the perspectives of parents, teachers, and students to move everything forward. So by teaching empathy, we're giving students that those tools to solve the complex problems and the global problems that require understanding people from different that are different from themselves. We're preparing students for a world that we can't even imagine. Because think about when we were kids, what they thought they were preparing us for. Is that the world that it really was? Did they even imagine the internet being what it was when we were a kid? No, we didn't imagine any of that. So the kids that we're preparing for is a world that we cannot even imagine. So what we have to teach them is future proof skills, and that's problem solving, kindness, empathy, healthy relationships. And, as a teacher, we need to even have that empathy for that student that's struggling because that interrupts that cycle of frustration and that keeps them from acting out. So if you show up with heart every day, you're showing the next generation that conflict can be met with compassion rather than anger. We're not just teaching a subject, you're teaching them how to be the kind of adult who will eventually lead our communities. My grandmother taught her kindergartners, and by the way, she was my kindergarten teacher too, that kindness was the first lesson of the day. My grandfather taught him that empathy was the most important tool of a teacher. So I believe that we want a future that's more stable and more compassionate than we have right now. So we have to have those values as central to our classroom, just as central as math and literacy is.
Hey, absolutely. And I completely can relate to that on many levels because, like you said, it's something that a lot of people don't realize, but, you know, teachers, they are shaping us to be our adult self in future years. So it's super important that we listen. Not always that happens, but some people think that teachers are nothing but, oh, well, they're just, that's their job. They're doing this because they have to. But that's not always the case.
That's the
Um,
hustle.
right,
That's the hustle part of the job, but not the hope.
it's part of the job, but it's not always the case when it comes to, because my aunt is a teacher as well.
Hmm.
And she refused to do high school. I tried to get her to do every grade that I was in, and she wasn't doing that. So she sticked with third grade for quite a long time, and then she moved on to fourth grade, and actually she retires this year. She is the one that I went and visited in Chicago all the times I've been to
Oh,
Chicago. So yeah, I mean, teachers, and she's one of the ones that, I was grateful for when I was younger because, when she actually first became a teacher, she, told me, Sean, it's not that the teacher is telling you that you're a failure. You have to understand, not everyone learns at the same level, and sometimes you might not catch on as quickly as the next person. Because I was one of those students that I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be a failure, period, because I just don't get this. And, I take forever to learn this or take forever to learn that. And that's not always the case. We can't look at the next person and say, oh my goodness, they're learning this quicker than I am. So the teacher's going to think, oh, well, the students and, they just don't care, they don't put enough work in or this, that, and the other. So that was one of the things that I struggled with when I was younger myself. Um, what keeps you going on days when the work feels heavy?
Oh, like those days when the paperwork's piling up or that hustle part of your job feels exhausting. Um, I look at my students and I try to identify the one that who looks like who I was when I 40 years ago. Because I look for that child who's using their classroom as their safe haven because things are difficult at home. And I remind myself that for that student, my energy and my consistency may be the only things that are solid in their world right now. So that keeps me going because to know that my heavy day is their safe day. But then I also think of my grandfather because he didn't just had heavy days, he had heavy years as a superintendent. But, again, he would eventually returned to the classroom because he knew that was where the real impact happened. And I keep going because by taking that long view, realizing that teaching isn't a sprint, it's a marathon of small, meaningful moments. I don't have to change the whole world today. I just have to be consistent, kind, and a present for my kids that are in front of me. I have to listen to them. I have to try and tap back into that kid who played school. And I'm deciding that I'm living out a dream again. Remember that dream that I wanted to do that. So I find that moment of play or connect with a student, that joke or that light bulb movement, those little small connections are what recharge my battery. And I always remind me of my husband says, he always says, my husband works in theater, but he says, if we're not doing it right, or if we're not having fun, we're not doing it right. And if I'm not having fun, I'm not doing it right. So I stop and I make sure I have fun.
Is a great way to think about it because if everyone thinks about this for just a minute, when we're having fun, our day goes by quicker and we can have more meaning from life because we are having fun. We don't have to be, you know, um, that stuck up person or that, oh my goodness, I hate this job. I should have never took this job or oh my life is worse than the next person because there's always going to be someone out there that is going to have something worse going on than we have.
Oh, yeah. There always
So
is.
there always is, so we all have to think about that. What habits or routines help you stay grounded and energized?
For me, I get to school early. I have to get there early so that I guess that physical space matters. So I want to make sure the sanctuary is ready. And then I use that quiet time to center myself to ensure that my hustle, my lesson plan, is ready and I'm mentally prepared to be the heart for my students. So that helping my room be ready for them to leave the outside world at that door, I do that just like I want my students to do. So I rely on social emotional check-ins with myself and with my students. So, we do our highs and lows of the day. And it reminds me that I'm teaching humans, not just subjects. So, when they light up and tell me their high part of their day, it gives me more energy than they can possibly imagine. And I keep the work personal. It prevents me from getting bogged down in that administrative noise thing, that I talk about. And at the end of the day, I have a reflection. So I think about my grandfather's transition from superintendent back to the classroom. Um, and I ask myself, did I provide a safe place for someone today? Even if my lessons didn't go right, if the answer is yes, then I leave successful. And then I separate my worth of that day from that heavy day, and it keeps me coming back.
That is amazing. That really is. Um, What do you hope your legacy will be, both as a teacher and as a person?
Oh, that's going to be hard. Let's see. As a teacher and a person, hmm, I'd say as a teacher that I hope that my students who walked into my room felt safe enough to be themselves. So I want to be remembered as that teacher who noticed the invisible child, the one that, like me, needed that classroom to be their sanctuary. I want a student looking back 20 years from now to remember that my room was the safe place where they felt stable and encouraged, and that if they feel they've succeeded. So I want to also honor the legacy of my grandparents. You can lead from the classroom, you can lead for the superintendent's office as long as you lead with integrity. So I hope my legacy along my colleagues is one of hustle and heart, that I was the teacher who was deeply prepared and professional, but never lost sight of the human being sitting at my desk. So I elevate the profession by treating it as the sacred calling that it is. So as a person, I hope my legacy is one of his resilience. I want my life to be proof that you can take the difficult chapters of your childhood and of your adulthood and write a story of service. Resilient isn't about surviving, it's about eventually reaching a season where you can truly flourish. So I want my future students and my community to see that empathy is a superpower. And if I leave a trail behind me of people who feel a little bit more capable and a little bit more seen because they knew me, then that's the legacy I need.
That is truly amazing, and you can tell that came from your heart. So that's definitely touching. What is bringing you joy in this season of life?
I think my greatest joy is that I'm realizing that I've become the person I once needed. When I walk into a classroom and I see a student who's struggling, I don't feel overwhelmed. I feel a sense of purpose. There's this deep, quiet joy and knowing that I can provide that safe place that my teachers provided to me. And it's a feeling of a story coming full circle. Excuse me. I'm finding so much joy in those little micro moments of teaching, the light bulb going on in a math lesson. Yeah, my grandfather would love that. Or seeing a student who showed kindness to a peer without being asked. Those small wins remind me that maybe I can't change the whole world, but I can change the entire atmosphere of a room, and that it's a very energizing and caring place to be. So, one thing I just want to say that, like we were talking about hustle and heart. Hustle is what we do to be prepared, but heart is why we show up in the first place. So I've seen it from both sides, from being that kid who needed that sanctuary, and to being that teacher standing at that front door. We all have that invisible backpack we're carrying. So whether you're a teacher, a parent, or someone just trying to make an impact, keep up that hustle because the work matters. But never, ever, ever let it crowd out your heart. Because at the end of the day, you've heard this before, people won't remember your lesson plan or what you told them. They'll remember how you made them feel.
So powerful, and that is so very true. Everybody, that is very, very true. If you don't take anything else from this tonight, take that, because that is so very true, and we all need to remember that. Where can people connect with you or follow your journey?
My Facebook page is public, so they can just look me up on Facebook. It's Merri Ronquillo, Merri, because my mother had to spell it differently, and my last name Ronquillo. My page is public, so I'd love to have friends come join me and follow along with my journey.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I do want to thank you so much for spending time with me tonight and letting us in on your life and your journey. I have been very honored that I brought you on tonight, and I enjoyed this podcast with you because I've learned more about you tonight than I have known in the, let me see, I think I've known you about 2 years now. So,
Yeah.
see, that's what I'm saying, everybody. We can be friends on Facebook, but that doesn't mean we're going to learn everything about an individual. We don't share everything on social media. Sometimes we just don't do that. So we can learn a lot about everyone by just asking some questions. So we
It's been my
definitely
honor
can.
to be here too, Sean, and thank you so much.
You're very welcome. All right, everybody. So we are going to close out the night with just a few things here. Thank you for spending time with us tonight here at Hustle and Heart Podcast. Keep showing up, keep pushing forward, and remember, your hustle builds the life, but your heart gives it meaning. Until next time, I want to remind you that we are here every Sunday except for holidays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And every other week, we will have life discussions, and the opposite week, we will have a person from their own small business or a business that they own of their own. And we will continue to dive in and learn from each other. And remember, everybody, have a great week and think about not only yourself, but others, because that matters. We don't know what other people are going through. So that smile that you might provide them may just make their day. All right, I am signing off for the night. I hope you guys all have a great week and you take care, and you will hear from me next Sunday.